Welcome aboard everyone to this much awaited exciting webinar, Onboarding Customers Remotely. People who are meeting me for the first time, I'm Swagata and have recently joined the marketing team, will be moderator for today. Puneet requires no introduction. You know him well. Anybody and everybody in the SaaS space knows him or must have come across one of his videos. So a small request, I want all of you to make this webinar as much as interactive as you can. Keep the questions flowing in. As and when I would take up the questions and ensure that Puneet answers them. Over to you, Puneet.
Now, as you can see, what I have here is a lot of blog that we have written on onboarding. Now, all of you have obviously joined us today because you all want to learn about onboarding and specifically about remote onboarding. But before I start with that, over the years we've written a lot about onboarding, and one of the most referred blog is what we have written here. It's called customer onboarding framework. So what we are doing today is I'm trying to avoid repeat any of this what we have already written. And if you guys are interested, I'll probably refer to some of this onboarding framework as we go along today. But it's a fairly detailed framework, talks about lots and lots of principles, and I'll let you read about it. It has an entire webinar connected to it, which was done many years ago, but it's still very, very popularly referred, has a full-fledged template in an Excel/Google Sheet format that you guys can use. But today, we're going to talk specifically on onboarding customers remotely. And what I have in store for you, everyone, is I've got about 10 tools, 10 specific tools that you can use as soon as you leave this webinar. Or if you're already using one of them, I assure you I'm going to make sure that you get better at the same thing. And hopefully by the end of this webinar, I also get to learn from everyone. And the idea is that we all get smarter in the next hour or so. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to keep this as interactive as we can. And so I'll encourage you to participate as much. So let me kick this off by starting a poll. And what I want to learn from everyone is, and you guys should see a poll. And what I want to learn from everyone is, what is your typical ACV, average contract value? Lovely. I see a lot of you filling it in. Fantastic. I'm seeing a lot of 20%, $5,000 to $10,000. Okay, the 10 to 100K is filling up, which is nice. Perfect. So the reason why we are kicking this off, this webinar with this poll, is because customer success varies dramatically. How you're going to approach customer success, what can you deliver under the banner of customer success, will depend on how is your unit economics. Unit economics can be an enabler, can also be a restraint on what can be done. That's point number one. Number two is based on somebody, if somebody is paying you $1,000 a year versus somebody is paying you $10,000 a year, somebody else is paying you $100,000 a year, because they all have different needs and hence they have got different expectations. So the customer expectations also dramatically change when we have different ARPAs. So frankly, I see some votes here so 13% is between $1,000 and $5,000, depending on what your unit economics is, depending on where you're based. The webinar today is largely focused on $10,000 to $100,000 bracket, because that is where you're going to see the use of remote meetings, the use of delivering customer success remotely, not just onboarding, but onboarding is one of those pieces, but overall delivering the entire customer success remotely has to be solved and has to be most effective between $10,000 and $100,000 ARPA or ARPU per year. Why? Because the prize is large enough that it's A, somebody is paying you because the customer is paying you because it's mission critical for them. B, this is a price range where you cannot fly in specifically to that organization, spend 3 months there onboarding them. That's not going to happen. That requires $100,000 plus ARPA typically. And hence, the best approach will be either a 100% remote approach or at max a hybrid approach if you're closer towards the $100,000 mark in terms of ARPU. So that's going to be the sweet spot. And interestingly, that's what I would have restricted the remote, pure remote onboarding to. But given the times that we live in today, so post-COVID, of course, things have dramatically changed. So we're going to touch upon what are these tools and how effective they can be, even if you've got customers who are paying you more than $100,000. So this is what we're going to see. I'm going to close this poll, and so the majority of our participants are going to be in the $10,000 to $100,000 ARPU range. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and move on. But before we get into again onboarding, why do we want to do remote onboarding? I think the answer is very simple. So one, it's driven by unit economics, exactly what I spoke about. But interestingly, why now it's becoming even more important is because of this very, very simple chart. So you've been hearing time and time again about tech touch, low touch, high touch. Nothing new. That's been the case all through. And then we've got post-COVID scenario where we are talking about tech touch stays tech touch, low touch, high touch, everything has become now remote touch. And that is the truth that we're living in. I know lots of parts of the world, thankfully, touch wood, and I hope it keeps going, are opening up. Vaccines are doing their job, and the businesses are gaining confidence, and hopefully the economy will be back in full swing. But until then, it is going to be a lot of remote touch. And I think even post-COVID, even when everything opens up, I think the behaviors of remote touch and a lot of these places will continue to stay pretty much forever. And that's the reality. So that's why. Now, before I go any further here, I've got one more little poll that I do wanna do. Is what is your contract type? Are you guys on a month-to-month contract? Are you guys on an annual contract or a multi-year contract? And I know we all have mixes, so mention the typical contract that your customers are on. Okay, I see month-to-month, just 14%, annual 57%, which is the maximum, and multi-year, which is even better, at 29%. But multi-years, I think it's a great position to be in. If a customer is committed that long, but at the same time, we as customer success leaders, managers, carry even more responsibilities because that's the trust that they've put in our hands, in our organization's hand, and we are responsible to delivering it. I always divide, the entire customer journey into what sales and marketing do is, in fact, what marketing does is, well, it's called value promise. What sales does is value demonstration, and what customer does is value delivery. So, which of course makes it the most interesting of all. Okay, so 63% annual, 25% multi-year. I'm going to close the poll, so thank you. I think majority of you are annual and multi-year, and this conversation today is primarily going to be about ARPU, which is at least in a few tens of thousands of dollars, and at least an annual contract. Definitely $100,000 plus is even better, and multi-year is even better. So this is going to be even more applicable over there. Now, before I get to my 10 tools, let's take a moment to define what is successful onboarding. We've all wanted to do, remote onboarding, face-to-face onboarding, tech touch-driven onboarding, self-onboarding, you name it, there is a strategy there. But let's take a minute to what is successful onboarding? And even before I get to what is successful onboarding, let me talk about who are we really onboarding? Are we onboarding a persona? So I know there are concepts of user onboarding, making sure every user is actually able to use the platform. But in a SaaS platform, in a technology that you are probably selling as a multi-year annual contract with tens of thousands of dollars and even $100,000 plus, before you can get to user onboarding, we all have to first onboard the business that is, or the function that you're working with. Let's say if you're a security platform. In fact, it'd be good to know, what sort of a space that you come from. Is it cybersecurity? Is it education tech? It is MarTech, sales tech, construction tech, the HR tech. There's so many variety. So if you guys can chat in the panel, that'll give me some more context. But as we are talking about who are we really onboarding? So we are onboarding a business to start with, especially on mission critical, or at least a function of that business, especially on the mission critical application that you probably are very likely delivering. Again, I'm waiting for some context. So I'm going to keep pushing you till you trouble your fingers and thumbs to give me a little bit more context. Will help me feel that I'm not alone in the room. I know Swagata is giving me some company, at least feel like I'm speaking to someone. So let's keep it interactive. Thank you. And so that's the key piece. So we are onboarding not a particular persona, not a particular user, but first thing first, we are onboarding the business. That means we need to understand and start with the larger use cases. The use cases that your marketing website promises, the use cases that your sales demonstrated or showcased during the sales process. Those are the use cases that was the value proposition that was never given to a user, that was always given to a business. Usually user onboarding is more critical. I'm not saying it's not important here, but the user onboarding is the only criteria if you're talking about very point solutions which are usually sold to a particular individual rather than businesses. For example, Calendly. Well, Calendly can be sold to, which is a calendar booking application. One individual can use it. So those are a lot more simpler use cases. But when we talk about a little bit more complex use cases, for example, if you're onboarding an organization on CRM, you can never onboard one single sales rep. You will always have to onboard the entire sales team, at least one function, one department, one product line, something like that, even if the organization that you're dealing with is huge. So who are we onboarding? We're onboarding a business. I believe that's established. Agree? Yes, no? We would love to hear some feedback. Again, looking at the chat.
Laurie has written that we onboard dental practices.
Oh, lovely. That's great, Laurie. I think that, and I don't know why I'm not seeing the chat then. Hold on. Oh yeah, I got it now. Thank you. Thank you, Zita. Yes, spot on. So Zita, I think you're absolutely spot on. It starts with onboarding the business, or at least a function of the business, depending on the context of what you guys do. And then moves on to, okay, now we've got the business onboarded. For example, if you've got the CRM onboarded, that means you've got the leads coming in, the web form is connected. Again, I'm hoping everybody understands the CRM typical use case, because all of us have used CRM at some point, or at least are forced to use it. And the lead forms are updated, the older leads are in, and some processes are stitched in. And after that, we start to onboard one individual after another. And that is when you are wondering, okay, how do I make sure that the admin is onboarded? But admin is the first person, or whoever is going to play the role of the admin is going to be the one individual or a set of individuals who are going to be, in a way, representing that business onboarding. Those are that set of individuals. So if you are, for example, onboarding, I'll continue to pick up the example of CRM, and we'll touch upon some of the others. In CRM, you're likely selling to the sponsor who is VP of sales, So I call that the sponsorer, who's the purchaser, who's purchased the platform. Then there is an admin layer, which is usually, if it's a smaller organization, there'll be a director of sales or head of sales. Or if it's a larger organization, you're likely dealing with a sales ops person. And that individual is going to play the role of an administrator. This is the individual who's going to, who's essentially going to work with you on integrating different forms, in bringing in different data points, importing users, plugging in, stitching all the integrations together. Whatever are the prerequisites for bringing in your customers, essentially. Bringing it, enabling your platform. Sorry, I lost that train of thought for a moment. And that individual is going to be, in a way, representing. So if at all you have to ever think about, persona mapping to business onboarding, then it's that administrator layer. So sponsor, the person who signed the check, the individuals whose budget, or the roles whose budget from which your technology was acquired. So that's the sponsor, the VP of sales here. Then we've got number two, who is going to be your administrator, the sales ops, for example. And the third are going to be the sales reps, which are your end users. Now, once the business is onboarding, that is when we are worried about onboarding all the sales users or sales reps or the end users. And that is where I think a couple of things keep in mind. One, that is where you can focus more on user onboarding. Number two, those are usually a large amount of users. For example, if you're in marketing technology, there'll always be a handful of users. Marketing teams are not, hundreds of people strong. They're usually, probably always under 5, maybe under 10, 12 max. But a sales organization can be hundreds of people strong. And that is where you are onboarding masses. And one of the good examples of when it talks about mass user onboarding is let's say an employee management sort of a platform where while your administrators could be a handful of people from the HR department, but every employee needs to be onboarded. But they are onboarded on very, very simpler use cases. And those onboarding are user onboarding. So today we're going to talk about tools, not about user onboarding, because majority of that can be done through tech touch, self-onboarding, simpler intuitive interfaces, all of that stuff. That's not the topic for today. The topic for today is, before we get to user onboarding as a problem, or before our platform is ready to onboard users, how do we onboard the business? So are we together? And I'm going to read a few chats. So if you've got any comments, so the next 10 tools that you're going to see, this is the context.
Yeah, Puneet, there's a question from Tom. He says, do you define time to value for the different group of people that you onboard? Example, admin, users, economic buyer, sponsor, sales op, etc.
I think that's a brilliant question. And I think it's a good angle. So time to value for who, right? See, in a perfect world, you want to make sure every persona gives you a thumbs up, at least a significant amount of, if there are more than one individuals, of course, in each of those persona, a significant amount gives you a thumbs up. But fundamentally, what is the core value that your product delivers. And that core value is delivered to the business. And hence, the number one target for you to convince or get a thumbs up from is my technology delivering the value that we promised, is going to be from the sponsor. Everybody else is essentially an enabler, maybe even a consumer at the end, but the value is already getting delivered to the business. So when you think about it, time to value can be a very, very interesting discussion internally, and I'm sure you're going to come out with some very interesting definition for your very specific business. But hopefully, I'll touch upon it, Tom, as we go down into some of the tools, and you're going to see. I'm going to touch upon that in a little bit of more detail. One of my tools. Sure, very welcome, Tom. Ashley, we onboard to the human service platforms. Okay, the HR tech. Then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Your first, depending on how complicated of the problems that your technology solves, it could be a week-long problem, but usually all employee human services platforms require many weeks, if not many months, of onboarding. So anywhere between 4 to 12 weeks I'm assuming is your typical onboarding time. And then for a variety of reasons, it can always get slipped. Okay, lovely. Glad, Ashley. And post 3 months comes like, okay, we have to now onboard 10,000 employees. And that's a very different problem altogether. And you're probably there going towards your product management and saying, okay, how can we automate all of this? But we're going to talk about the first, 4 to 12 weeks. So that's going to be the end. Okay. That said, let's dive in. Okay, everybody is warmed up. Oh, I missed the original question. So we talked about who are we onboarding, but what is a successful onboarding? See, the successful onboarding, like when Tom asked, I answered around that is the business getting value? And the best way to get that answer is, have we able to deliver the outcome? So I'll go back to a CRM example. Has the conversion rate improved from a lead to an opportunity to opportunity closed one? But we all know that's not going to happen the first 4 months, 4 weeks or 12 weeks. It's going to happen probably, hopefully in a year, at least. You may start to get some signs about it, maybe at least 6 months in, but that's a very long time. So how do we know whether we are delivering value? The next thing that you can do is you can go to the sponsor saying, are you getting value? But the sponsor is going to say, I think we are heading in the right direction. I see a bunch of problems getting solved, but am I going to get the output or the outcomes, the desired outcomes or not? That's going to be defined over time. That we will see over time. So as the best proxy, again, I'm talking about the proxy. I think those are the end pieces. As the best proxy that you can get to measure, monitor on a day-to-day basis, I think it's going to come down on product adoption. Again, this is not a replacement for what I call the business outcomes or the desired outcomes that your platform promised. That's the ultimate goal, but that will have a very long gestation period before you can even have the data to validate that. Sure, Tom, no worries. You're likely going to see a recording there. So that's going to be the piece, and we're going to touch upon that as we move forward. So with that said, let's get into the 10 tools which are going to help you with remote onboarding. Now, some of these tools are something that you're very familiar with. So our tool number 1 is having a kickoff meeting. But hold on, you were always having kickoff meetings, right? So what's so special about this kickoff meeting? I think the speciality about this kickoff meeting is that how you can present yourself and how you can do this kickoff meeting. This kickoff meeting, remember, is not happening face-to-face. That's one. The customer is sort of getting a handoff from sales, which is probably and very likely delivered like a beautiful experience to them. That is why they've signed up with your technology, your organization. And now they are, in a way, getting a handoff from sales and getting handed over to the onboarding team. If you have a specialist onboarding team, which usually is when you get into tens of thousands of dollars ACV. And if you don't, I'll highly recommend that you do. Or / customer success managers. Then that kickoff meeting hence becomes very important, because in so many ways they've got their expectations really high based on your sales experience. On the other hand, at this time they're getting introduced to you for the first time, and hence they're probably also slightly worried, slightly nervous, like, is the same experience going to continue? Here are a few tricks with which you can make this kickoff meeting, absolutely amazing. Number 1, I think, at least for your key customers, it is completely okay to be involved even pre-sales, especially once your sales have qualified. They know that the customers sort of move beyond the typical qualification demonstration, and they are now getting into implementation discussions, onboarding discussions, integration discussions. That is the stage when you can see that the customer is already 50% likely to be signed in, you can go there and be party to that. And again, there's a demand on bandwidth. But what this is going to do is that it makes it so comfortable, because there's never going to be a handoff. There never will be an actual handoff between individuals, pre-sales and post-sales, because you as an individual would have participated even in pre-sales. And the context of their pains, of their environment, of their tech stacks, or the ecosystem in which you are going to be delivering the technology will already be familiar to you. So that's trick number 1 in the kickoff meetings. So that way it's the kickoff meeting is with friendly faces already. You already have a relationship. Second, who will do this kickoff meeting? Even before you get into the kickoff meeting, we recommend that you go and have a handoff call with your sales team. Check with the sales team what has the customer purchased, assuming you were not party to that sales process beforehand. Sit down with the sales team, take down their notes, understand, learn from them what they've promised, what they've delivered, what they've committed. If there are any timelines, if there are any massive, if they've promised the moon, then at least you need to acknowledge that and learn that. The sooner the better. And we take it, we put it in the deck that we're going to take in that kickoff meeting, and make sure that we come out as someone who have already gone through a lot of those pieces, and we come out as somebody who's already educated about their needs, and we are not asking them for the first time. Now, the second thing is something that will be amazing, will be to actually have your sales person or your sales manager, the person who actually sold the product, be party to this kickoff meeting. I know I'm asking the sales rep to spend another 30 minutes or 45 minutes at max in this kickoff meeting, but what this is going to do is this is going to make that handover of that trust which was established between the sales rep and your buyer during the sales process, that sort of gets handed over to you. And in that sort of a tri-party meeting, the customer, the sales, and you as onboarding or the implementation manager, you are making sure when you speak out that, hey, this is what, let's say John was the sales guy. So this is what John has told us, that this is what you purchased, these are your challenges, and this is what you look forward to. And this is what success feels like for you in the first 3 to 6 months. Are we on the same page? And that will give a lot of confidence. There'll be no gaps, no balls dropped. And that is how it's going to be. So I see Jagannath saying there's so much slippage of information and loss of comfort in sales to CS handover if CS is not involved in pre-sales. Spot on. But you'll be surprised, Jagannath, how many places CS is not really involved pre-sales. So and it could be because of bandwidth challenges and so many other challenges. If you can do that, I think that's best. But if you can't, those are some of the pieces that I just mentioned that will make sure that happens. And in fact, internally, we even make sure that sales actually gives a walkthrough of the contract, because a lot of time contracts could be very custom made for different customers, different situations. So sales even gives a walkthrough of the contract, which is signed between the customer and the organization during the handoff process. So I think those are some great practices. So that was kickoff meeting for you. Same good old kickoff meeting, but a very interesting one. The second is the stakeholder mapping. And this is again something that we recommend that you try to cover in the kickoff meeting itself. So kickoff meeting, that's all prep, but something that you want to come out with is the stakeholder mapping. A lot of times, see, when we were delivering onboarding, or when we were doing onboarding by flying into the customer, sitting in the same conference room, walking the same halls, probably parking ourselves there for a few days, for a week, or maybe even for a few months, especially if you've got professional services involved, right? And I'm assuming you don't have professional services involved, or if you do, even that is now operating remotely. So there, within the same room, you can see, who's the leader. It's a lot of easy to establish visual connections, easy to understand visual hierarchies, easy to read body languages. But when the same thing is done remotely, it is very difficult, because let's say when you are in those conference room, a meeting is happening, some of the sponsor all of a sudden says, hey, I'm going to join you towards the end of the day. I'll come down to say hello. But that is never going to happen in a remote thing, because there is no, an open window where a sponsor, while just taking a coffee break, can stop by and say hello to the team. That's not going to happen. So you're never going to get that opportunity to build that relationship. So you will have to specifically reach out and build those relationships. So one of the pieces that we do is we understand who's the sponsor, who's going to be the SPOC for onboarding, who's that one individual, and make sure never accept too many SPOCs. I'll hopefully we'll touch upon that later. Spock has to be a single point of contact. Underline that single. A lot of time you're going to be given multiple Spocks. Has there been a situation ever with any one of you? It's like all these three are going to be your Spocks. So 3 people as single point of contact is not single anymore. And you know what happens when there are too many owners. It just doesn't move and it just keeps bouncing off. So understanding each persona, I'm sure you've got your own personas. So you've got who's the VP, who's the sponsor, who's the administrator, who's the head, who's the developer, who's the integration head, who's the data ops guy, and who's going to be the end user, and there so that you can develop some champions in the end users as well. Get those mappings upfront as soon as you can and make sure you call those out, because these are going to be very, very, very useful all through the onboarding cycle. And we're going to see how this is going to be very helpful. Now, as you're mapping them out, also map out the stakeholders at your end and call it out very, very clearly. In fact, say, hey, we know so-and-so is a sponsor. We know so-and-so is going to play the administrator role, or you can always check, hey, as the director of sales, do you have a sales ops who's going to be the admin, or are you going to be the admin? Absolutely valid question to have on the kickoff call, and get that clarity as soon as you can. While we get clarity on this side, also offer clarity on your side that I'm going to be your onboarding manager, so-and-so is going to be your customer success manager, your support team is going to be shared, but here is the support, here is the methodology or the ways or the channels in which you can reach to support, whether it's email or live chat or a phone call, whatever, however you operate there. And these are the escalation paths. My manager, and so on and so forth. And making it visible makes life so much easy, as we build those relationships, because we don't have any visuals. So because we are not in the same environment. So do that, and I think you're gonna love what we get just as a result of this simple stakeholder mapping. Especially when you do during the kickoff call itself, sets the direction very, very clearly. The role of a Spock. I think the role of a Spock is very important. So who's a Spock? Let's define. When I say Spock, who's the single point of contact for that onboarding? Don't accept multiple Spocks. You can keep escalation paths. You can have multiple stakeholders, different personas. All those are very valid, but only one point of contact. Who is going to be your primary point of contact? But what is the core role of a Spock? Let's just step back and analyze that. Anybody wants to comment before I go any further? I'm looking at the chat. Do you have a concept of a Spock? Like, do you reach out and say, hey, who's going to be the point of contact for this entire onboarding? How many of you do that? Give me a yes.
Question from Zita. Would you recommend asking the main contact if there are particular touch points that we should include other people who are to be involved, or should they just automatically be included from the start?
So what I typically do is, because the sales individual is going to be involved in the first kickoff call, we make sure that you make sure that all stakeholders are in, because during the kickoff call is we're going to do a lot of important things. So stakeholder mapping is one of them. Getting an agreement on the Spock. So it is just not communication to you who the Spock is. It is also, they are communicating internally to all the stakeholders. So literally you're getting a stamp of the sponsor, let's say the VP of let's say HR tech, who's purchased your HR technology, the VP of HR, who's purchased your HR tech. You're getting his or her stamp saying, okay, this individual is going to be the Spock. So that means who is the person that he internally reached to, she internally needs to reach out to. So I will highly recommend that you make sure that the kickoff call has all people in at least. And from there on, you can roll out the plan and you can involve relevant people depending on the agenda for each of those tasks or meetings that you're going to have in the plan. But for the kickoff call, I highly recommend at least all the stakeholders that you know You reach out, and you can even be very specific that we expect all these stakeholders to be on that call to make it comfortable. And if there are gaps, the good news is you're going to catch that in the very first meeting, and that's completely fine. And they will also be able to understand, oh, we have not thought about implementation. We have not thought about who's going to be the data supplier, and we've not thought about who will, be responsible for integrations. And those are good questions. You don't want to ask those questions 2 months later when everything is already going wrong. You want to ask those questions on day zero so that we know who to catch hold of when things go wrong, or somebody who is responsible from day one. Good, Ashley. I think that is a good acceptance. I think we all are getting better every day. So the role of a SPOC, and we've not touched the role yet. So the role of this one individual is going to be, in very, very simple words, if onboarding, which is, let's say, 4 to 12 weeks long onboarding, which is going to be a typical onboarding, think of it as a project. If that is a project, there are 2 project managers here, not 1, 2. One is, of course, you. You are orchestrating the entire onboarding coming together. You bring the data, you bring the integration authorization, you check this data architecture, somebody else do the data sanity check. You bring in the stakeholders so that I can educate why we need this data if they get stuck. So you are sort of orchestrating from your end, but who's the party who's going to bring all those stakeholders, all the relevant people, pull, push data, people, resources, everything that is needed from the organization, from your customer's organization, is going to be this SPOC. So look at this SPOC as your counterpart, when you're wearing the project management hat. So you're wearing the project management hat at one end, and your counterpart is also wearing the project management hat on the other end, and both of you are working on a jointly agreed plan. And that's the key. Once both of you operate as a team, but responsible for getting things moving and pulling the right strings, pulling the right resources and the people on both organizations, that is when the beauty of that collaboration and that onboarding, that machinery will produce and will work in absolute sync. So that's the primary role of SPOC, because this SPOC, he, she, himself, herself may not have all the skills which are needed, all the authorizations. You might be working with an intern. You might be working with a junior. You might be working with somebody who's got authority, and that'll be fantastic. And every time you work with a senior, things move so much faster. But even when you are working with somebody junior, you set the expectation, what they have to do, and if they are not able to do, then sort of you should have your next step ready, which we're going to talk about now. Okay. Now let's get to number 4. And we are still on the kickoff meeting. All of these things can happen on the kickoff meeting, by the way. But these are all individual items which are very, very important. Now, we spoke about plan. I think plan is the fundamental piece which is going to stitch their expectations, your idea of rollout and implementation on the paper in black and white in front of everyone. You want any gaps to come out on day 0 or as soon as you can. So walk in the kickoff meeting with a plan. And I'll tell you the one date that you need to start with and start working backwards from it. The first thing which should be on that kickoff meeting plan is, hey, let's say today is 25th of June, 2021. We plan to onboard you at the end of, let's say, 8 weeks. So 24th June, or let's say 2 months, easier for me to calculate, June, July, August. So on 25th of August, you will go live. So literally mentioning the go live date in the kickoff meeting is such a powerful piece. And this will force you, the moment you put that go live date on the kickoff meeting and say, I have a plan, which we're going to present to you now, which will make sure that you go live by 25th, which is 8 weeks later, 2 months later, by 25th August, and here is what I'm going to present. Now, in that 8-week plan, there are obviously things that the customer has to do on their end. They have to provide you all the data. They have to provide you all the stakeholders. They have to provide you all the authorization. They have to work with you. They have to configure the systems, give you all data points, templates, data sheets in specific formats, all of those pieces, right? And if any of them is going to slip, that should have an impact. But I think there has to be a very clear connection between if you change or any of these things are not possible within these timelines, then it is going to have an impact on the go live date. What you don't want to see is that the customers keep slipping on their commitments and we are still held responsible for the same go live date. And that establishment needs to be done. We can go live on 25th of August, provided we follow this plan. And if we miss any of those plans, make sure you call out not on 25th, but as you miss every timeline. That's going to be the beauty. So you're essentially making sure that there is a plan in place, and you are, even if the detail is missing, and that's completely fine. And you can, in the first kickoff call, probably the detail is impossible to deliver. What you can do is you can share the plan offline. So I'm presenting to you a plan, review it offline. The plan will actually is built to take you live by 25th of August. But if any of those pieces, which has individual items which you need to complete by specific dates, if that is not feasible, that is going to impact our go live date. So review it, make sure you've got people, resources, everything aligned, and you're committed to spending hours and efforts at your end while we do our side of the piece. Am I heading in the same direction? Give me some feedback. In the right direction? Am I touching the challenges that you guys face? Looking for some feedback here. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Thanks, Laurie. Okay, glad. And you necessarily don't have to agree with me. I think feel free to give us give me feedback or any direction that you want me to talk about. Thank you, Zita. That's great. Okay, cool. So walk in with a kickoff date, and I think that'll be fantastic. Now let's get to relationships. I think we've spoken. We all know the value of relationships, and in the remote world, they are going to be tough to build because we are remote, right? Soft things that you can do, and you already know that. Those soft things are, I think, turning on your cam, for example, showing the individual you are. I will even go ahead and recommend, if possible, for you to go ahead and don't blur or don't hide your background. It's okay to, you can always restrict the space that is visible and, keep your home privacy intact for sure. But it is okay to come out as an individual. I remember some of the, and you all have, been on probably countless Zoom calls and video conferencing calls now in the last 1.5 years. And we all know those individuals whom we have met over Zoom calls, not just by how they looked or what they were wearing, but also by what their backgrounds were. Do they have, their kids' scribblings in the background and drawings in the background? Do they have family photographs? I remember one guy, taking it from his garage, and he loves his garage. He's got fancy car, he's got all his tools and gadgets. So it speaks so much about the personality. And I think those are the moments when you can actually genuinely build and try to build a relationship. Those are very human angles. So I think it's a very small trick, and there are a whole bunch of them. I'm not going to get into any more detail here. But while it is still difficult to build relationships, but there are tools there's one tool called Juhari Window. I'm not sure how many of you were familiar with this. This basically works on the principle of reciprocity. If I share something which is maybe outside the project that we are discussing, that hey, the weather is like so and so, or where you're taking this call from, or what your plans are for the weekend, you're instantly going to see the reciprocation becomes fairly comfortable. So for example, this weekend, and this is I'm not making it up, this is what's going to happen. This weekend, I plan to do a cousins get together on Zoom. which is always, which was, as we all grow up, that becomes like once a year, or sometimes even, once in many years sort of a thing. It's always very hard. But in this pandemic, when everybody was just bored to death and nobody has any reason to why they couldn't make to a Zoom call, I was able to get so many of them going. I don't know if you've tried any of those things, and if you've not, do let me know if you've tried that. But those are some of those pieces which will tell you which helps you build those relationships. Zita says we're currently doing a lot of these processes and they work well. Oh, fantastic, Zita. Anything that you can share on building relationships will be great, because there will be moments when things will go wrong. They will go wrong from your customer's end. They will go wrong from your end, from the business side, and that is when you will need all these relationships will be required, so that they can cut you some slack. You can get away. You can use some brownie points there. So the sooner you start to develop them, the better it is.
Zita has a nice thing to say. She says, "Puppy pictures go down a treat."
So well put. So well put. So well put. So relationships, we are all humans. I think we all love. We all long to be loved, and I think and appreciated and recognized as individual. And with just that one statement, Zita, I'm not being able to see you face to face, but I can totally now picture you and I know you so much better now. So, but thanks for sharing. So sharing activities around what's going on the weekend, soft jabs.
This was really cool.
Cool. Glad. Try that out at your own risk. It purely depends on what you're doing on the weekend also, by the way. So, all right, moving on. Collaboration. Now, hey, what's so fancy about collaboration, Puneet? You're just telling me what things we already do. But let's take collaboration to the next level. So we all believed in collaboration and we all always have collaborated. But I'm not sure how many of you have already embraced some really amazing magical tools. So for example, when we onboard customers now, in fact, sometimes even during the proof of concept or the pre-sales stage for more enterprise level customers, we connect Slacks. I'm assuming majority of you are using Slack, and Slack's one beauty of a platform to collaborate, because it connects to organization in ways that you will become part of their organization. Just like they can reach out to their founders, their team members, their managers, their cross department, they can reach out to you. You're no different than their own internal team members. And in fact, in the last year and a half, so many new team members have been added that people haven't even met each other in person. Just FYI, I've never met Swagata in person.
Yes.
But we, thankfully, she's usually so cheerful, and she always, laughs on my poor jokes. So she's always great and has given me good comfort in our relationship. But we haven't met. So that means if I've got a partner who's, let's say, part of my Slack, when I'm looking at reaching out to my team members, or when I'm looking at my team, it is no different than reaching out to Swagata. So connecting those is fantastic. Similarly, things like Office 365 or Google Docs, fantastic platforms for good, secure collaborations. And I think those are the platforms that you should absolutely embrace and totally double down on. In addition to, of course, platforms like CustomerSuccessBox, which you're going to talk about, which will be very, very, give you the true insights and stuff, which is going to be part of the piece. But collaboration is very important. Any one of you, using Slack as a means of collaboration, or Gmails or any other platforms? And I'll talk about, using some of the more complicated ones, whether they work or not. And I'll just talk about it. So I've created a shared Google Doc with clients. Fantastic on the tasks, to-dos and whatnot. That's great. Got it. For those, yep, we do that too. But I think majority of our customers are on Slack. So that sort of is is great. I think that was the only pull. Otherwise, every other platform like a Slack equivalent is still as good as Slack. But if your customer is not on it, this sort of the ecosystem then struggles. Now, there are platforms that you can use, like some of you probably are thinking, okay, why can't I use a dedicated tool, let's say a Trello or a Asana or something like that, in a more dedicated project management or a to-do list management platform. Now, the challenge with that is, and then tell me if your experiences have been different. See, remember, what exactly are we doing? So our end goal is to onboard them so that the users can start logging into your platform, and they start logging into your platform and start adopting the technology, right? So now I'm saying, Mr. Customer, before you log on to my product, you have to log into this project management tool that you're not familiar with, that you're not even on board right now. First, you log into this, then you follow all the steps here, then we log into that. You see my point? We've created resistance, which to me is, we are making them log into, as it is very difficult for customers to, onboard them and make them log into our own platform. And then now we have to, make them log into in between platforms so that they are enabled to log into our platform eventually. I think it's like, I don't have my comforts there. So I don't think that's a winning strategy unless the customer is already on that platform. And that is where Slacks and Google Docs come into play. And so my criteria is, I think it's absolutely amazing to embrace all the collaboration tools as long as it is not a new platform for your customer. So that's the underlying statement. So for whatever that's worth, so that's collaboration for you. Now let's get into the next level. Number 7, product adoption milestones. How are we doing on time, by the way? Okay, we are, okay, I'm going to rush through. We've got 3 more to cover. Product adoption milestones. So product adoption milestone is something that we are very proud that we actually track very, very closely. So if you're using, let's say, CustomerSuccessBox, what we do is no customer goes from sign up to good health, like where all your personas, like Tom was asking, all your use cases are solved, all the personas are using the product. It never happens overnight. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to 12 weeks for you to start onboarding users, and then onboarding users and different personas takes its own time. And then over let's say 2 to 4 months is when everybody, assuming, comes on board. Again, these timelines can be very, very different depending on what use cases and what technologies and complexities you have in the challenges or the problems you're solving for your customers. But coming back, what will happen is the product gets adopted in a step-by-step fashion. Imagine you can break down your product adoption into different steps. So for example, the first step, the admin logs in. The second step, they authorize an integration, or integration 1, 2, and 3, and you can literally name all of them. Number 4, data gets imported. Number 5, new users get invited. Number 6, a project management, or let's say whatever part of the product gets configured, employees get invited. The old data gets brought in. So these are different parts of the same product. And what you are seeing is, what CustomerSuccessBox can track is, it can once you've broken down your product adoption during onboarding, how will you break down this adoption as a journey is going to be key to monitoring the true impact of whatever efforts you and your counterpart, which is the SPOC on the other side, is doing in terms of product adoption. And that is where CustomerSuccessBox can be very, very helpful, because if those timelines are missed, then the red flags are raised. If those timelines are achieved, then it automatically moves forward and takes you to the next step. And so product adoption milestones, think of these as like 5, 10, 20, 25 steps before, as a journey before they are onboarded, before our onboarding is successful, and before what I call they are to the first value milestone. So one of you were, I think somebody was asking, and we were talking about what is time to value. Before I get to time to value, what is value? I'm sure when you're going to ask this question internally, even within your organization, the value, time to value, and the definition of value itself, before you can get to the time part, is going to be 5 different definitions coming from 5 different colleagues of yours: product managers, founders, sales, marketing, success, support. They will all have their own definition of, and even within the same function, different colleagues will have their own definition. So I think value is best defined not by us, by our customers. And interestingly, same product gets purchased to solve different use cases by different customers. Have you seen that? Same product. So same product of yours gets purchased by customer A for use case 1, customer B for use case 2, customer C for use case 3. And although, yes, you're not going to have like 20 use cases, but probably, top 2-3 use cases. And it is absolutely okay to actually have different product adoption milestones for all of those use cases. And in fact, you should, and we always recommend having a different onboarding journey, different onboarding approach and a plan for all of those use cases, and establishing that use cases in the kickoff call itself. So use case 1 is your number 1 priority, and hence we're going to follow this plan. And once that use case 1 is delivered, so for that customer, that's value. And what is the fastest way to get to that use case is and should be your focus. So your onboarding plan for your customer A, customer B, customer C can be very, very different. And again, I'm only touching very, very, very lightly on product adoption milestones, but all the detail that I just mentioned probably was too much. This is the detailed part of our customer onboarding framework. If you've not seen that, that's probably 20 times more valuable than what I've spoken today so far. So absolutely check it out. That's like a must-have if you have anything to do with onboarding. So do go check it out. That's fairly well regarded, respected, referred to across the industry. So that's product adoption milestones. Monitor them automatically. This is not a check-in, check-off. You can't ask someone. This is true product adoptions. This gets tracked through telemetry, essentially. Okay. Then, sure. Swagata, can you just share the link? I think I did share the blog originally. Now let's get to another tool. You all know QBRs, quarterly business reviews. You all know annual business reviews. Have you heard about onboarding business reviews? See, we all know during the onboarding is where we need the maximum push. That's where the maximum challenges happen. That's where we need to, where we need support from everyone else to support your cause. We need to pull the maximum resources. Why then wait for the entire quarter to have this business review? Because the moment you call it a business review, that is when all the stakeholders jump in. So what we do in the kickoff call itself, we announce 3 OBRs, 3 onboarding business reviews at the gap of 4 weeks each, or every 30 days, 3 months, 90 days. And what that does is that, think of these as, quick succession, 3 business reviews. You don't want to call it onboarding, that's fine. But primarily 3 business reviews in quick successions. And then after that, you ease off the pace to quarterly, assuming that makes sense for your business. And by the way, if you want to learn all about quarterly business reviews or any business reviews and stuff, that's another link that probably Swagata can mention. That's like, I think, 7,000 word, sort of a very, very, very detailed piece. So I'm not going to touch upon that. But OBRs, consider doing onboarding business reviews, especially if you see you are not getting sufficient support from your customer organization, especially when you see there are hurdles that you need their support to cross, or if you need other business stakeholders to come and take a decision or give a thumbs up on agreement of anything like that. So anybody has tried something similar to this onboarding business review? Have you heard about this before? So this is something we introduced. I think I spoke about it first about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I do a bunch of LinkedIn talks. I think this is where I spoke about it first. And we've successfully rolled it out. And this is something which was which has given up really, really great traction. Okay, I'm running out of time, and I'm gonna touch upon the next 2 ones really quickly, and these are also very, very important. Escalation paths. When things go wrong, what happens if somebody is not able to meet the planned timelines, either at your end or theirs? Now, if at your end you already know what to do, you're going to reach out. But do you have an escalation path internally? Let's say if you're working with a particular function of yours within the organization, you should know that after 2 days or 3 days of slippage, you are going to escalate that internally to whoever their manager is. And that escalation path should be predefined. That escalation path and those SLAs, internal SLAs, should be predefined, pre-known to everybody, including your colleagues, so that there are no surprises. You don't want to be in a position where you are complaining or backbiting about your colleagues. I'm not recommending that. But I think having a very, very clear expectations from each other in a very professional manner, I think is a bare necessity. And without that, as a wearing the the project manager hat, you will never be able to deliver even a single successful onboarding on time. Similarly, having an equivalent on escalation path at your customer's end. What if your SPOC stops to respond? What if your SPOC actually makes a commitment, does not fulfill? First thing, like you remind them of the deadline. Second, you tell them the deadline's overdue now and you've missed it by a day, missed it by a 2 day. Still no response. A new deadline comes and say, oh, we're going to take 2 more weeks. Fine, you can take 2 more weeks, but that is going to have an impact of, let's assume, equivalent impact, which means your go live date is now going to move from 25th of August to plus 2 weeks. Sometimes you can accommodate, many times you can't. But what I want you to do is the minute something is missed, you make that communication, and that communication needs to go to all stakeholders, especially the sponsor. Of course, you want to CC your SPOC because, and in fact, even forwarding that email, making sure everybody is posted on the new go live date. And that is exactly where you're setting expectations, you're stating facts, and everybody has got clear expectations. You always deliver. If you have bad news, you want to deliver it as early as you can. Don't hold on to the bad news. It is not going to go away. It is only going to look worse. It is going to come back and bite you even bad if you hold on to the bad news. So deliver it as early as it's made available to you. Even if you're suspicious of that it might impact, make sure you call it out, you raise the red flags as soon as you can. And so that then the sponsor also has this opportunity to jump in. And if it is so important that 2 weeks is a slippage that the sponsor cannot afford because of their mission criticalities at their end, then they're going to do everything to make sure they do their part, or bring in more resources or whatever to enable that. Last, not the least, now this is where you want to, again, use platform like CustomerSuccessBox. Again, if you want to know more, it's a very, very detailed platform, very, very detailed, pieces that you can do here. This is not a CustomerSuccessBox demonstration or anything like that, but there are risk alerts that you want to automate, you want to set, you want to have systems which are monitoring data every day. If your relationships are slipping, when was the last time you received, if there is a drop in touch points, if there are too many support tickets, too little support tickets, if you've got no touch points, if you're not receiving any emails, responses, if you're not meeting any milestones while you're doing trainings, but your product is not getting adopted, integration is not working, whatever, all those alerts can be automated, can be set up. Even if the invoices are not paid, all those pieces can be set up in CustomerSuccessBox. And all this happens automatically. It's not data entry like a CRM. It pulls in data from various systems automatically, including your financial systems, your Gmails, calendars, Office 365, your product telemetry, your invoicing systems, your ChargeBees and Zoras of the world. So all those data sources get plugged into CustomerSuccessBox, and all that gets transferred into triggers and alerts, which will drive you, guide you, and raise red flags as soon as they are identified, rather than you waiting, till the end of the onboarding cycle when things are already heated up. So there you go. Those are the 10 tools that I wanted to share for today. Tell me if you found them useful. I know I'm a little over time, about 8 minutes. So I think I'm gonna stop here. And feel free to stop by on CustomerSuccessBox. We are a customer success platform. We're the most advanced AI-powered customer success platform. I'm not going to harp on it more, so I'm going to let you stop by our website, see what you like, and sign up for a demonstration. Hopefully, we'll meet you again on the other side. Thank you. And Swagata, is there a feedback form or something that you have? Otherwise, I think we are good to wrap
I'll
up.
send it after this thing, the feedback.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, everyone. I enjoyed my session, and especially um, Shakaya, Zita, Tom, Ashley, all of you, Madeline, all of you kept me, engaged, and that was really helpful. Always good to have people responding back and talking to you and keeping this a very conversation style. Lovely. Take care, all of you. Have a good one. Cheers.